Folks, this is Warwolf. And I'll be honest, I never thought I'd be doing a video again after YouTube decided that it wanted to start demanding that people potentially open themselves up to malware, spyware, whateverware, just because they want to fight ad blockers. And they want people to be vulnerable to God knows what kind of malicious programming. That's something for another day. I am here to respond to a Reddit user, whether or not this is a real person or a more likely to be a bot, calling themselves Likely Sprite on Reddit, who had the audacity to say that he, she, whatever, hates gamers. Okay, so Likely Sprite, I'm gonna drop a truth bomb on you. It's not us. It's not gamers that are the problem. It's you. It's the game developers. You are, to use your vernacular, extremely problematic. And I know what you're thinking. How dare you use that word? That's our word. I don't care if it's your word. I'm going to call you problematic because you're problematic. So, in a post, now I'm not going to go word for word over this because I don't have it up in front of me and I don't really care to. But the first thing that came out of this person's mouth as a complaint was, again, claiming to have watched some kind of gaming event and said that every time the chat window was open and a character who wasn't and I'm quoting them here, cis-het white male wasn't on screen, people were calling it woke or complaining about DEI. So I'm going to drop another truth bomb here. Cis is a problematic label. It's short for cisgender, and I'm sorry, but that is also a problematic label. Cisgender is not a thing. You're either trans or you're not trans. Trans people actually go through a legitimate transition, whether that be socially, medically, or in many cases, both, in order to overcome gender dysphoria, to feel comfortable in their own skin. I have no issues with this whatsoever, because as long as you're not hurting anybody else, it doesn't matter to me how you choose to identify or how you choose to be comfortable in your own skin. Until you start trying to force labels on other people because you think that will help you feel better about yourself. Now, I don't know where the term transgender or transsexual came from, but at the very least, it does make a certain amount of logical sense because, again, it is somebody transitioning from a gender to another gender. You can't transition from one sex to another because, well, sex is scientific fact. Gender is a construct that we've come up with over the years to distinguish from one's biological sex. Therefore, people who are not trans do not need a label because they're not identifying by a gender. If they don't have body dysmorphia or gender dysmorphia, as it is sometimes, I'm not sure if they're two different things or not. I was always under the impression that one was simply an outgrowth of the other as far as being a term of use. But people who are not trans and not non-binary, I do consider that a separate thing, and this is not a knock against anybody who's non-binary. Again, as long as you're not, trying to force people to use your personal pronouns or in any other way cause harm psychologically or physically, I don't give a damn what you do. I will do my best to try to work with whatever pronouns you want. up to a point. I do not believe in the 100 gender thing or 1,000 gender thing or whatever it is now. There's male, female, or transitioning between the two. I know people say that they don't feel like either one. Physiologically, you are one or the other. But again, as long as you're not hurting anybody, I don't give a damn how you identify. I don't give a damn what you want to be called up to a point. I'm not going to use made up words for you. I'm also... I don't mind referring to people as they if it's an abstract, but if it's a person I know as an individual, I have a hard time responding to that with a they, because my brain just rebels at the idea of referring to a singular person in the plural. I can't guarantee that I'd be able to do that all the time if somebody asked me to, but at least I'll be upfront about it. But the problem is, again, the term cishet white male. You say this as if, first off, again, you don't medically cis. You don't socially cis. All right? You socially transition. You medically transition. That's why the word trans makes sense. All right? And again, I got no problem with trans people being in the body that they're comfortable with. And if that means they do have to make, physiological changes through gender reassignment surgery, hey, go for it, as long as you are at the age where you can make that decision on your own. I know a lot of people are immediately going to scream bigot, transphobe, what have you, because I don't believe that a minor should undergo reassignment surgery of their bodies when they are not of the age of majority. I don't care. As long as you are not hurting anybody else, as long as you are age 18 or older, do whatever you want. All right? At that point, you are no longer under the aegis of anybody else. And I do not believe that your parents should act like assholes if they don't approve of you being trans. But at the same time, I don't believe you should be going around your parents' backs just because you want to do something that you are not yet of the legal age to do on your own recognizance. But again, then we get to the next part. Het white male. Full disclosure, I am mixed race. If you took a look at me, you would think I was either white or possibly, and I say possibly because I'm not really sure, that you might think I was potentially from the Mediterranean just because I have like slightly darker skin in some areas and paler in others. I don't know what that story is all about. It's just the way my body works. I'm also Jewish. So I am Jewish. I don't know exactly how far back on one side of my family. I know I'm Polish American, at least going back to my great grandfather, who was the first person to emigrate here from Europe on one side of my family, specifically my father's side, who is in fact the Jewish half of my father's side is where I'm from in that regard. I have been bar mitzvahed, so if anybody wants to say, "Oh, you're not really Jewish," if it's not on your mother's side, no, I'm fully bar mitzvahed. I am Jewish, but I'm also of Catholic heritage as well, and I don't really try to favor one over the other. But for the longest time, I never really saw myself as anything other than just a random American dude who happened to be fucking white in terms of my skin color. Although, again, I somewhat got a slight olive coloration on my arms, the back of my hands. I don't know how or why. Maybe that's just a skin issue. Maybe it's some of my heritage from my mother's side or somewhere even further back on my dad's side. I don't know. And I can't ask my father. He died in December. And I wouldn't even presume my mother would have that much information about his side of the family, and I don't know how much she knows about her own side of the family. But being heterosexual is not a bad thing. Being homosexual is not a bad thing. Being bisexual is not a bad thing. Now, I know people are going to say, well, what about pansexual, this, that, and the other? Again, I don't believe in the 100 gender thing, the 1,000 gender thing, or the unlimited gender thing. You're male, female, or transitioning between the two. And again, for those of you who consider yourselves to be non-binary, I personally, I've got nothing against you guys, but again, if you want me to refer to you in the plural when you're a single person, I really just don't think I could do it unless I was really trying to keep it in the forefront of my mind, and most of the times I'm not going to do that. Just because it is not something most people think about at any given time. Not a knock, just the truth. Next, you come up to the whole white part. Again, there's nothing wrong with being white. Nothing wrong with being black. Nothing wrong with being Latino. Nothing wrong with being Asian. Nothing wrong with being, I guess I would say, first settler. I won't use the term Native American because, as we've learned and as science teaches us, nobody is actually indigenous or native to this landmass. Even the people that have come to be called Native Americans, in fact, came here over a land bridge during the last ice age. So I will regard them as the first settlers of this country. But if the idea is you have to have been born here and to be considered a native, then any single individual who has been born in this country since its founding is, by definition, a Native American, in that we are all people who were born in this country. So there's that. Then we get to the whole male part. Now, I really hope I don't have to say this, but in today's era of modern day sensibilities and modern day feminist rhetoric, I kind of have to say this. There is nothing wrong with being male. Whether trans male or biological. There is nothing wrong with being a man. There's nothing wrong with being a woman. There's nothing wrong with being a trans man. There's nothing wrong with being a trans woman. I don't really see anything wrong with being non-binary, even if I personally don't get it. And yet, this Reddit user, this likely sprite, acts like being any one of these things is somehow a negative. Now, from what I've been led to understand, this individual identifies as trans. Didn't say trans male, trans female, but considering more often than not, I see the term trans, and it's usually somebody who's transitioned from male to female. 50-50 chance it's a woman, 50-50 chance it's a man. All I know is whoever this is identifies as trans, so I don't know if it's trans man, trans woman. 50-50 shot either way, but more often I do hear about people transitioning from male to female, so if I'm wrong about that, hey, that's on me. Then they get to the question of, is it good to be woke? No. Because woke, as it has come to be these days, along with DEI, have really come to mean, in order to be diverse, you can't be white. You can't be a man. You can't be heterosexual. As if not being any of these things, or being only one of these things, or two of these things, is the only way to be diverse. Diversity doesn't just come in body type, body shape, body color, or ethnicity, let alone sex or gender. Ultimately, people are what they are because aside from gender, Everything else is a completely immutable characteristic. There are some individuals who have tried to pretend to be transracial. I know there was one woman, I don't remember what her name is, I'd have to look it up, who was a white woman who insisted she was black. I think she was part of the NAACP. Or at the very least, I remember hearing a remark on a video at some point that she was. Whether or not that's legitimately true, I have absolutely no idea. I just know that apparently this was a white woman who claimed she was a black woman. Maybe she has black history and just decided to identify as black. Mixed race, possibly? Who knows? We know that Obama was mixed race and he chose to identify as black. More power to him. I don't care. Doesn't hurt me. No skin off my nose. No skin off anybody else's. But this is where the core of the problem comes from. The minute you say you're a bigot if you don't like the changes we've made to a game that you have seen multiple iterations of, I'm sorry, this makes you the problem. If a series is known for a certain set of characters, a certain aesthetic, a certain storytelling style, and you decide, well, I want to change this to fit quote-unquote modern audiences, change all of that, and then expect the same response that previous games in a series or franchise have gotten, you're going to likely be disappointed. And the problem is, instead of going, okay, we tried this, it didn't work, the audience rejected it, let's see if we can find something that they'll like, or even just saying, okay, screw it, we tried, let's just go back to the tried and true characters, storytelling, formula, and make good games. Instead, they double down on the idea of, well, it's the fans' fault, it's the gamer's fault, it's the consumer's fault. I am literally reminded of an episode of The Simpsons. I don't remember the full details of it. It's been a long time. I haven't watched The Simpsons in a long time. I haven't watched a lot of Fox in a long time because, I'll be honest, I have kind of moved more to the center as opposed to being on the left. Now, I was not far left. I'm not where most Democrats are these days. I am more of a... I've always considered myself center left, but more center these days than left. Because I'll be honest, I was a registered Democrat almost my entire life. Once I was old enough to vote, I had been a Democrat from that point forward, and I only changed my party affiliation to independent this past year. But there was an episode of The Simpsons, and I know this is a bit meandering, I know this is a bit rambly. It's almost 1 o'clock in the morning as I'm making this video, and I am responding purely on my gut and my personal reaction to this. Anyway, Principal Skinner, a longtime mainstay character in the cast, gets separated from, I believe it's primarily the fourth graders, and he begins trying to find them in various places. And every place he goes that he thinks the kids would gravitate to because he saw them as fun, there's nobody there. And he asks himself, am I really so out of touch? Seconds later he says, no, it's the children who are wrong. I'm sorry, game devs? Game journos? Game blogs? You are Principal Skinner. You are the ones out of touch. You are the ones who are telling people you're wrong for liking things that we don't approve of. You're wrong for not just accepting what we give you, even if that something is basically dog food, and say, please, can we have some more? And when you don't get what you want, your response is, oh, you're a bigot. Oh, you're a misogynist. Oh, you're a racist. Really, bigot and racist at this point might as well be the same goddamn thing. You know, I'm sorry, it's just, there's no other way to put this. They might as well be interchangeable at this point. Oh, and I love this one. Oh, you're a Nazi. Yeah, when a lot of people who are saying this kind of shit isn't for them, who happen to be Jewish, and you say, oh, you're a Nazi because this isn't for you. Oh my God, you racist fuck. That is my response to any game dev who dares to compare gamers to Nazis. Because that's just disgusting. That is just disgusting. So again, when you have people like this Likely Sprite who literally put up a thread in Reddit saying, I kind of hate gamers, and literally basically said that he, she, whatever, hates gamers because they don't like the slop being put in front of them. Well, my first thought is, you're in the wrong industry. You are absolutely in the wrong industry if you expect people to just automatically like what you give them without giving you notes, without giving you a response, without giving you critique. If you are expecting universal acclaim, you are more than likely going to be disappointed because this is extremely rare. Even some of the greatest games of yesteryear do not have universal acclaim. Some of them come damn close. There's no mistaking that. But there are very few games, systems, companies, developers, or creators who have universal acclaim, or ever will. Nor are they meant to. There's always room for improvement. But there's also a point where you have to realize that what you want to put in front of people isn't necessarily going to be palatable to them. And if that's the case, you can't complain that the people that you want to buy your stuff don't buy your stuff because they don't like it. Your job is not to put out the game that you want to see. That's your job if you're a novelist. You write the story you want to write because nobody else can write that story. Nobody but you. And not everybody will like the story you write. The same is also true for gaming, but the problem is that with gaming, you are not writing for yourself first and foremost. You are writing for a consumer base. A lot of writers do not make money off the novels they make. Some are lucky. But for every Stephen King, for every J.K. Rowling, for every Dean Koontz, for that matter, for every R.A. Salvatore, I don't know if Salvatore is actually making a career out of this, but the man is a prolific writer, so maybe. For every single one of those people that I just listed off, and I just listed off the people that I know by name, there are hundreds, perhaps thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of people out there who put out books who never get 1/10,000th of the recognition or the success of those individuals. Why do they do it? For the love of the writing, for the love of the story, and because nobody but them can tell the story they want to hear, that they want to read, or that they want to see. Again, in this case, see, read, hear could theoretically all be the same thing. If you're reading a book while listening to the audiobook version of it, and again, I'm rambling. I know. I get it. Move on. But my point ultimately is, it's not us. You are not free to make changes to a game that's part of a franchise just to satisfy your own sensibilities. You have a responsibility to the base that buys those games, to the base that keeps that franchise alive. This is what Disney has failed to understand with Star Wars. This is what Disney has failed to understand with Marvel. This is what, to a lesser extent, every other major game and movie studio has failed to understand. Without us, without the viewers, without the consumers, without the gamers, without the readers, you're just spitting into the wind. You're screaming into the void and nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. Nobody will care. Because whenever you don't get the response you want, you attack the very people who are your life's blood as an industry. As a professional, I don't give a damn how good you are at game development. If you make games that nobody likes, nobody's going to buy the games, and eventually you're going to be out of a job. Screaming at people that they're bigots, or how dare they be heterosexual white men, or how dare they be, a black heterosexual man, or an Asian heterosexual man, or a Hispanic heterosexual man, or a Latin, or a Latino, I should say, heterosexual man, etc., ad nauseum. How dare they be these things and yet not like when we basically decide we're going to race swap somebody or gender swap somebody or orientation swap somebody. I mean, we're only just making things more diverse, right? That's literally the reasoning that I seem to hear and see every time I see these articles or these threads complaining about how dare people not like this thing. And the immediate go-to is bigotry, homophobia, misogyny, whatever. And literally when some of the people saying we don't like this are homosexual or, dare I say it, women or not white or, I don't gasp, might even be trans, and they don't like this, you're stepping over them to say, you are just brainwashed. Let me speak for you. Let me be offended on your behalf. No. No, you may not speak on my behalf. No, you may not speak on anybody else's behalf. No, you may not speak for us. And no, you may not be offended for us. We choose what we're offended by. We choose who we're offended by. We choose how to express our offense. And we choose when we speak, who we speak to, what we say, and why we say it. Wow, that just gave me an extremely disturbing amount of thought that I'll deal with it another time. Because, holy crap, I just realized something extraordinarily stupid about my younger life. But, anyway, I know this has been rambly. I know this is still rambly. And I know I'm probably beating a dead horse. And probably pissing on the corpse at this point. But I'm going to say this again. To game devs, to movie studios, to comic writers, to everybody out there who thinks diverse means you have to be anything but white, male, and heterosexual, and thinks, why are we not flocking to your stuff? It's because you have alienated the audience. whether that be the people that you're attacking or the people who are on the side looking at this and going, yeah, we don't like this crap either. You are the problem, not the consumers, not the readers, not the players, not the YouTubers. You. This is not 2015. People aren't going to be bullied or shamed into supporting things they don't like anymore. We have, in fact, gotten over it. We're not woke. We're awake. We are aware. We see the playbook. We know the plays. Anytime something shows up that isn't immediately embraced as the next stunning and brave, the hit pieces come out, the fans are attacked, and then you wonder why people don't flock to the next thing you put out. It's because you've driven people away. There are franchises that have survived the better part of half a century. And they're starting to lose that base. And when they lose that base, profits are down, sales are down, and the bottom line is affected. This happened with Star Wars, this happened with Star Trek. Amazingly enough, it hasn't yet happened with the Transformers, but it might be getting there. You name it. It will happen because a lot of people who like the idea of DEI, not realizing that it doesn't stand for diversity and I swear to God I can talk. It doesn't mean diversity, equality, and inclusion. It stands for division, exclusion, and intolerance. Because when you try to go out of your way to include somebody, you are by nature deliberately excluding others. I have literally seen people step down from roles they have played for years because somebody out there screamed into the ether, "How dare you not match the skin color of the character you're playing?" But I've only seen it when somebody is white. Let me remind you that one of the most famous characters in Western media of the last perhaps 10, 15 years, Samurai Jack, who was one of the best loved original creations of Cartoon Network, thanks to Genndy Tartakovsky, I believe. I think it's Genndy. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong about that in the comments. But either way, the character Samurai Jack from that self-same titled series is Japanese. He's voiced by a black man. Nobody complains about the fact that he is not Asian. But you look at the character of Family Guy's Cleveland Brown, or The Simpsons' Apu Nahasapima Petalan were voiced by white people. And people lose their goddamn minds. And you wonder why people are alienated from these shows, from any product that tries to be inclusive or be equitable. Here's the problem. Equity is not a realistic concept. Equality is, but equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. There was an attempt made to create equality of outcome. It was called communism. It has never worked in any place, anywhere, anytime, even if the country utilizing this was not trying to enforce it by means of arms. Every place that communism has been tried, it has failed or is in the process of failing. And the only thing keeping those nations afloat is a military force that is beholden to a communist dictator. We live in the West, where we are, in fact, a representative republic in the United States of America. Now, people say we're a democracy. No, we're a representative republic. If we were a democracy, we would be a direct democracy. We're not. We elect representatives, and they choose things for us based on what they think we want to see. The problem is, people are trying to claim we're just trying to be diverse, we're trying to be equitable, we're trying to be inclusive in fiction. And that's a noble goal, but the problem is, it will never work the way these people think it will. So again, to game devs, to studio heads, to comic book writers, to everybody out there in the entertainment industry, I'm going to say this again. This is beating a dead horse. I know. I don't care. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it again. And I'm going to say it again. With the hope and the prayer that it gets through to you. That you wake up to the realization that you have been doing it wrong for the last 9 to 10 years. It's not us. It's you. Look at movies, comics, games from the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s, right up until perhaps 2014 to 2015. There were diverse characters, there were inclusive characters, and nobody complained. You know why? Because it was never the one sole thing we were supposed to care about in any of the products that we were given to consume, or to watch, or to read, or to play. We were never asked to care about what box we ticked. Now all we're asked to care about is, who is this person sleeping with? Who is this person attracted to? What does this person identify as? What color is this person's skin? We don't want that. I can't speak for everybody out there, but for the people who have rejected what you're selling, what you're trying to put in front of us, I'd like to think that even if I'm not speaking for everybody, I am at least speaking for myself, and I'm speaking for those who are unwilling to step up and say this for themselves because they don't want to be labeled. I don't care if I'm labeled. All right? I'm mixed race. I have multiple disabilities. People will tell me that I'm privileged because I look white. People will tell me I'm privileged because I'm a guy. I live on welfare. There's no privilege in that. I literally have fucking diabetes. There's no privilege in that. I am blind on one side and have been since before I was born. There's no privilege in that. I have a partial hearing loss in both ears and have since the day I was born. There's no privilege in that. I have a heart murmur and have since the day I was born. There is no privilege in that. Unless that privilege is to be attacked and considered an acceptable target because of what's between my legs, the color of my skin, and who I'm attracted to. I don't want to see somebody who has my disabilities on screen just to feel like I can relate to a character. Whether that screen be a video game screen, a movie screen, or something else. I don't give a damn what somebody looks like. I give a damn about what the character does in the game, does in the book, does in the movie, does in the comic. I want to see what the story means. I want to see a reason to care about the character beyond, oh, this character's black. Oh, this character's a woman. Oh, this character's trans. Oh, this character's gay. I don't identify with somebody based on the box they check. I identify with a character if that character has a compelling story. And I'm sorry, I don't give a damn who somebody's fucking unless the story is a goddamn romance. I don't give a damn what color somebody's skin is unless literally the only thing we're supposed to care about that character's skin is that it isn't white. And if that's the case, I'm staying as far away from that kind of story as possible because I already know the whole thing is going to be, oh, poor me, poor us, poor X, Y, Z supposed minority, when even people in that minority group are looking at this stuff and saying, you don't speak for us. This started out as a response to just a game dev, but as I said, this was a bit rambly. This was a bit all over the place, and it is from the heart. But again, I'm going to say this, and I will keep saying it in private, in public, on Discord, on Reddit, everywhere. It's not us. It's you. You are Principal Skinner. You are out of touch. Things were far more inclusive, diverse, and equitable in material from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, even to an extent, the 70s, than they are today. When you literally have the Walt Disney Company basically saying, we don't want to show, even if it'll be good, if the characters are white. Now, this is supposed to be the family-friendly company. If they're discriminating based on race, that's disgusting. And they're not doing it because we want it. They're doing it because other people in the media or in the industry think that's what should be happening, and they don't understand why we reject it. When you stuff this stuff down our throats, when you make this all we're supposed to care about, we as the audience, whether that just be me or people I know or people out there I've never even met who feel the same way, we tune out. Again, multiply disabled, mixed race, Jewish. There is nobody that I know of in my immediate vicinity like me. There is nobody on screen like me. There's nobody in books or comics like me. And I don't want there to be. I'm boring. I am dull as fucking dishwater. The only girlfriend I ever had, I was terrified was going to find out that she could have done so much better, which, ironically enough, because of my own inability to actually vocalize my feelings for the woman, pretty much made that a self-fulfilling prophecy. But again, we don't want what you're peddling. You're trying to tell us what we should want. You're trying to tell us what we should care about. That's not how anybody's mind works that I'm aware of, unless they're completely brainwashed and will simply do whatever the hell anybody says, like a zombie or a robot or what have you. But again, there is nobody like me out there that I know of with my exact set of circumstances. I don't want there to be. I don't want to see myself on screen. I don't want to see myself on stage in my exact situation. I want to be able to identify with somebody who's a badass. One of my favorite characters in the early 2000s was Blade. black, half vampire, vampire hunter. I didn't give a damn he was black. I gave a damn about the fact that he was a fucking badass. I gave a damn about the fact that he went out there and fought vampires. Sure, I was a little weirded out that they basically turned Blade into, Vampire Hunter D. But the story was good, so I didn't give a shit about the fact that they ripped off something from Japan. The character was still good, and they took the basic character of Blade from the 1970s, kept that part of him, and just plunked on the half-vampire thing. My favorite fucking vampire hunter in the US, in terms of movies, for the longest time, and probably still isn't even a white guy. It's fucking Wesley Snipes. It's a black dude. All right? I mean, people are going to say, well, what about, they might say, oh, well, you're just secretly like, Abraham Van Helsing from Dracula. Yeah, I do. But strictly speaking, he's not a vampire hunter. Professor Abraham Van Helsing literally stumbled into the situation with Dracula. Now, the character that Hugh Jackman played, completely different character from the book character Van Helsing. Sure, he's a monster hunter, but he's not specifically a vampire hunter. My favorite vampire hunter from Western media is Blade. But the new stuff that they're talking about doing with him in this new stuff that Disney wants to put out, I wouldn't watch that on a dare. I want to see Blade being Blade. I don't want to see anything about his daughter and how he needs to get out of her way. I don't want to see anything about his sister and how she's better at him than everything. I don't want to see any of that. I want to see Blade. Eric Brooks, I believe is his real name. Blade. I want to see Blade doing Blade things. I want to see him fighting vampires. I want to see him beating the shit out of vampires. I want to see him getting the shit beaten out of him by vampires. I want to see him actually fight for what he wants. Not to simply be handed it because he's black or female or trans or gay. I want to see the character deal with issues in front of him that are relevant to him as a person, not as a checkbox. The same thing with video games. I don't give a damn if the character leading a game is a woman, as long as I care about the story. One of my favorite 2D platform games is from the Castlevania series. It's Order of Ecclesia. The main character in that game is a woman. Her name is Shanoa. And she literally goes through most of that game in a situation where her emotions have literally been sealed away from her ability to feel them. Part of her entire story is being able to regain access to her ability to feel emotion. That is a good plot point. It drives part of her story. The other part of her story is that she is part of the so-called Order of Ecclesia. She's literally a group determined to defeat Dracula. She's fighting monsters all across Transylvania. I'm down with that. That was a good game. Same thing with movies, with anime, with all of it. As long as the story is good and you don't get tunnel vision and demand that we accept that you want us to like something that we don't like because you're forcing some kind of a message or some kind of diversity checkbox down our throat, we'll go for it. You look at... Now, I'll be honest. I have not watched anything from Disney since, Zootopia? In terms of modern works. Zootopia is honestly one of my favorite movies. I'm not the biggest Disney fan. But Zootopia is a movie I like. And it does, without being in your face about it, deal with racism, but I don't think they realize this could be taken as racism in either direction, but that's the beauty of it. But again, we're not meant to care specifically that Judy Hopps, who is the main character of the film, is a woman. Now, they do make a big deal out of her being a rabbit. So, yes, there's a bit of a race situation involved there. But they basically go, well, your issue isn't that you're a rabbit. Your issue is that you're literally 2 feet tall and you're going to get squished out there. Which is ironic because she nearly squishes several people in Zootopia who are even smaller than she is. But you get the idea. But again, Judy has a story arc. We see that she wants to be a cop because she wants to make the world a better place. We see that she has an issue with carnivores because she was scarred by one as a child. But we see her overcome that. We see her form meaningful bonds, not just with not only a carnivore, but the same species of carnivore. So yeah, again, species, not race, but you get the idea. But with the same species of carnivore that scarred her, a fox. We see her grow as a character. And we're not supposed to tunnel vision in on, oh, she's a woman. Oh, you know, here's who she's dating. Here's who she wants to, who she wants to fuck. No, we see that she has a goal, and we see that she wants to make strides toward that goal. And we want her to succeed because they made us care about her as a character without beating us over the head with, care about this character because XYZ. Video games, movies, TV shows, you're all trying to beat us over the head with, care about this person because of XYZ checkbox. We don't want that. We want to care about the person, not the checkbox, not the token. You want to hear something crazy? This is something that I'm sure will blow everybody's mind. Just based on what I've said, because I know a lot of people out there who are hearing this are going to scream, oh, he's just a bigot. Oh, he's just a this, he's just a that. I know somebody out there is going to call me a Nazi. Again, I'm fucking Jewish. Imagine yourselves being slapped upside the head for that racist comment. So, two of my favorite shows right now. One is completely independent. The other was picked up by A24 Films, but they're both owned and created by Vivian Madrano. Hell of a Boss and Has-Been Hotel. You want to hear something crazy? There is all of 2 straight people in the core casts of these shows. Correction, there's one apiece. There's one straight person in Has-Been Hotel who is part of the core cast. Likewise, in Hell of a Boss, there is one, count them, one heterosexual person in that core cast. At least if the recent piece of artwork that was just put up is to be believed, and supposedly somebody from Spindlehorse Productions claimed that it's canon. Well, you know what that means? Literally, these shows have virtually no straight representation. But you know what the crazy thing is? I don't care. It'd be nice to see more straight people in the show because, again, that's straight erasure. And that's just as bad of a thing as gay erasure or bi erasure. But I'm going to tell you right now, the stories are so well written that unless they straight up told you somebody was gay or bi or what have you, you probably didn't even care because you wanted to see more about what the characters were going through. Right now, one of the most popular characters in Has-Been Hotel basically is asexual. and that is Alistair the Radio Demon. And people will ship him in fan fiction with everybody under the sun. A lot of people want to ship him with Charlie Morningstar, who is, of course, the central character of Hazbin Hotel. People are starting to ship him with her father, who I think at this point, he's not part of the core cast, so he doesn't really count towards the straight representation, but I think he might be the only other straight person in the cast. And that's Lucifer. All right? You know what I absolutely loved about Viv's general response to this was, in fan fiction, do whatever the hell you want. This is just who they are in the show. Perfect way to handle it. She didn't make anything really about their sexualities. She did tell us who some of the sexualities of these characters were. She told us a while back that Charlie is bisexual and that Moxie from Hell of a Boss is bisexual. I think they just outed my favorite character in Hell of a Boss, Luna, as bisexual. And a character that she's kind of forming a somewhat sisterly bond with is apparently asexual. Now, here's something I didn't know. I was always under the assumption, and again, this is just me because I really don't know anything about this shit, and I'm going to be upfront about the fact that there's stuff about this I don't know. I was always under the impression that romantic attraction and sexual attraction were interlinked. Apparently, this isn't the case for asexual people. I literally had no idea about that. I learned something. Cool. But either way, when I learned that these characters weren't straight, my first thought was, that's okay, whatever. Show me more about the story. Because I didn't give a damn about who these characters were attracted to or who they were fucking unless it was part of their story. Hell of a Boss is almost entirely built around the same-sex attraction between the show's main lead, Blitz, and Stolas of the Ars Goetia, who I believe they just said is straight up gay. I was always under the impression he potentially might have been bisexual, but so heavily traumatized by his abusive wife that he pretty much swore off women. But no, I guess they're saying, again, if this other piece of art that they just put out, which supposedly reveals all these people's sexuality, is meant to be taken literally as canon, then no, he's straight up gay. Okay, fine. Don't give a shit. He was already in a situation where there was very much a clear pattern that they were going for the idea of him and Blitz as the romantic endgame. There you go. That's part of the story. That makes me care about why these characters have this attraction. Blitz apparently will fuck anything that moves. Blitz has dated both sexes. Personally, if it weren't him and Stolas getting together, I would love to see him get back together with Veronica, who at this point is the only other serious relationship we know he's had. But you know what? I don't give a damn. Because I'm still just as invested in seeing whether or not Blitz and Stolas will get together as I would be if the story was about Blitz and Veronica. Or Blitz and any of his other apparently dozens of one-night stands and possibly a handful of serious relationships, or at least on their end they considered it serious. Him not so much, because apparently the man literally does not believe he deserves to be loved, so he self-sabotages himself a lot, apparently. But again, that's part of his core character. And that makes him interesting. Not because of who he fucks, not because of who he's attracted to, but because this is part of who he is and how he tries to overcome it. This is literally a show with one straight character in it. And she's a psychopathic sadist, and we love her for it. But she's certainly not the best representation of straight people. If you think all straight people are sadistic murderers, then yeah, she's horrible representation in that regard. But if you like the idea of this psychotic little imp woman who is all kinds of perky and bouncy and fun as hell, who loves to murder the shit out of people to the point that she joined a company for hitmen and is arguably probably the second or third best fighter out of the group. Because I honestly don't know who's the better fighter out of Blitz and Luna, but like they're definitely on par with Millie. Like, dude, at that point, yeah, we know she's married to Moxie, but even if she wasn't married to Moxie, even if she was into girls, I wouldn't have given a shit because, god damn it, she's hilarious and she's also an awesome fighter. Now, the problem is she doesn't really have much of a story of her own yet, and the one time they tried to input story into her, it kind of went against the grain of what we've already seen established for her. But there you go. Either way, she's still a good character, even though she's the only straight rep in that show. Likewise, Nifty from Hazbin Hotel. She's the only straight character in the show. And by the way, I find it very odd that literally the only two straight characters in these shows who are part of the core cast are women, which has some odd connotations now that I stop to think about it. But again, they are treated as being specifically into guys, but they're also treated as not being quite right in the head, which again is horrible for straight representation. But when it comes to just them as a character and not who they're attracted to, they're awesome characters and I want to see more of them. And that's why they're doing it right. And everybody else who's going, why don't you love these characters for being diverse? Is because you're doing it wrong. You want us to care solely about who they fuck, what their skin is, who they, think is, a bad person for, being of a different sexuality. Again, being straight, being white, being male, being female, being black, being trans, other than being trans, everything else that I have just listed off is an immutable characteristic. You can't help the way you're born. If you're born white, you're born white. If you're born Jewish, you're born Jewish. You get the idea. The only thing that is mutable in this day and age, and that's only through surgery, is the concept of gender. I'm sorry. This is me beating a dead horse. I've been going on about this for the better part of what, half an hour or so? No, excuse me. Wow, actually, I'm just double checking this now. It's been an hour. I've been going on about this for an hour. I should have been done in maybe a third of this time. Because I really had to just get this off my chest. I had to get this off my chest. It's not us. It's you. Stop demanding that we care about who somebody wants to sleep with. Stop demanding that we care about what color somebody's skin is. Stop acting like you're a horrible person for drawing characters in fiction in a situation you don't like. Literally, and I mean this is, I swear to God, this is true. I have literally seen people bitch and moan about people drawing characters in fiction from animation or a game in a heterosexual relationship with somebody if they're canonically gay. But those same people will then turn around and do the exact same thing with canonically straight characters and go, well, it's okay when we do it. No, it's not okay when you do it. All right? If it's not okay when one side does it, it's not okay when the other side does it. Otherwise, you're basically hypocrites. Plain and simple, whether this be fan fiction, fan art, fan anything. Let fans do what they want to enjoy what they want. Unless you are an absolute stickler for the canon, and you stick with that no matter what the sexuality of the character that you're dealing with is, you got no right to talk. Period. And again, for those of you game devs, for those of you studio heads, for those of you studio directors, comic writers, all of you, it's not us, it's you. Why Are your products being rejected because you're alienating people for not liking it? It'd be one thing if we were just going, oh, well, oh, poo-poo, this character's gay, or poo-poo, this character's black. That doesn't happen. In the literally 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, this did not happen because it wasn't the core of the character, unless literally the story was, oh, poor me, I'm black. Poor me, I'm gay. At one point that made sense. But in today's day and age, where we are a much more tolerant society, at least here in the US, the only intolerance I see is from people who act like being white, straight, and a guy is somehow the end of the world. And when even the people that you claim to speak for are saying, no, stop, this is damaging to all of us, you speak over them, you step over them, you act as though you are the one who should be heard and they shouldn't be because they're saying the word no to you. Well, regardless of whether or not I'm your target audience or not, when people say, no, stop, you're doing it wrong, listen, think, and maybe try to see things outside of the bubble that you've been living in. Because I'm sorry, people don't want DEI. People don't give a damn if you want to hire somebody because of their ethnicity or their race or their sex or their gender identity or their sexuality. And the same is also true of the products you make. I don't give a damn if a character's gay unless that has something to do with the story. I don't give a damn if a character's black if that has nothing to do with the story. If the character is black and just happens to have a really good story, him being black is incidental because it's not, oh, look, there's a black man doing something cool. No, this character is doing something cool. He just happens to be black. I know a lot of people are going to go, oh, he's going to bring out this old chestnut. Yeah, you're fucking right I'm going to bring out this old chestnut. Martin Luther King Jr. said we need to judge people on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Now, I know a lot of people go, oh, but he didn't really just mean just that. A lot of people will make that argument. Maybe they have a point. Maybe they don't. I don't know. I don't care if they have a point. Because the point of that initial statement overrides their point. You know why? Because that's how we should be dealing with things. We shouldn't care about whether or not somebody is black or white or Asian or Latino or Hispanic. I don't know if those are considered to be the same thing. I'm just covering my bases here. What you are does not mean shit. Who you are means something. What you do means something, especially in fiction. Because if the only thing we're supposed to care about a character is their sex, their race, their sexuality, their gender identity, or God fucking forbid their politics, I'm going to tune out. I know a lot of people are going to tune out. Because this is not what anybody wants out of their fiction unless it very specifically markets itself as we're all about the identity politics. And most people won't try to sell their product on that because they know it won't reach a broad audience. Right now, what you're doing is driving away the audience. And when all you've got is this small, teeny, tiny speck that remains, that actually is up their own ass enough to give a damn only about the identity politics, the check boxes, you will not be able to sustain yourselves because you don't have the broad appeal you need to keep going. It's not about the identity politics. It's not about the check boxes. It's not about the tokens. It's about the story. It's about whether or not you can make us care about the story. If you can't make us care about the story, you're dead on arrival. And if you hate people for rejecting what you're putting out because they don't like what's being produced by your business, you're in the wrong business. There is nothing wrong with being straight, with being white, with being male, with being black, with being female, with being anything. As long as you're not harming other people or forcing political identity views on them. And a lot of people these days want to force identity politics on others and scream racist, bigot, homophobe, Islamophobe, whatever phobe. Well, here's a word for you, pal. Heterophobe. Oh, you don't like that, huh? When people point out that, decrying somebody for being straight is heterophobic, well, guess what? It's just as bad as being homophobic, and it's just as real a thing. You don't like when people call you misandrist because you're attacking people for being a man? Well, guess what? It's real. It's a thing. It fucking happens. And it's just as bad as misogyny. And then there's racism. Open your ears, hear me, and listen as hard as you fucking can, to quote Danzig from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Racism is racism no matter the target of the racism. I don't give a damn if somebody's white, black, Asian, Latino, you name it. I don't care if you're pink with yellow, purple stripes and polka dots, okay? Yes, I flubbed that word there because I'm freaking so pissed off about this. I swear to God I can talk. I don't give a damn what your skin color is. If you act like being of a certain skin color makes you a bad person or gives you quote-unquote privilege, I'm sorry, you're the racist. You are the fucking racist. You are the asshole. And if you don't like that, maybe it's because you need to have a good hard look in the mirror and say, shit, am I actually the bad guy here? And the answer, if you're honest, is yes. Yes, you fucking are. I'm calling this a video. This is like an hour and 12 minutes. I should not have been up this late ranting about this shit. But I'm going to rant about this shit for an hour and 12 minutes because I just did. I just beat a dead horse, pissed on the corpse, fed the corpse to a meat grinder, and fed it to a goddamn dog. And quite frankly, I feel sorrier for the dog than I feel sorry for anybody out there who feels offended by the fact that I had to point out something that should have been fucking obvious. So again, game devs, studio heads, comic writers, anybody out there who has the gall to call anybody a bigot when they don't say anything about a person's sex, race, ethnicity, or sexuality, and simply reject the story you put out because it's crap, and all you're doing is forcing politics into your stories and demanding that we call it stunning and brave, fuck you. Because you're not stunning and brave. You're bigoted, you're intolerant, you're problematic, and you need to unlearn these behaviors. You need to unlearn your unconscious bias. Oh, you don't like that? Guess what? It's what you've been saying for years. I just held up a fucking mirror.